Good afternoon and welcome back to our third episode with Lindsey Stillwell. And I think this is going to be my favorite episode because I just love talking about children and family. And you have an incredible family. You have four beautiful children. And when I see the posts and what you do on Facebook, I see you painting with them. I see creating, reading. Every time we talk, you've got your children with you. You're in the park. You're doing stuff with the kids. So kind of take me back to where the Lord put that all back together for you.
Well, after I left the care center, so my older daughter lives with my ex-husband in the States, but she comes up at Christmas and summers. And but when I left the care center, because I had my baby London there, she was born when I was at the center, and I had Grayson for a while there too, my son. So I had left the center. I got a place in housing and got my kids back. And actually, I got my kids back and COVID hit. So full-time parenting for the first time. No school, no resources. And like I had minimal at my home, right? Because I just was starting over. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. Now the healing journey really begins. Now it really begins. Is I didn't realize what I was getting into, to be honest. Like, because, we love our kids. Like, I believe all parents love their kids. I know people, may make a lot of comments, and you see a lot of brokenness in my area too, and when people are addicts and stuff. But, you love your kid. It's just, people don't know when they've got hard hearts and they've been through trauma and they have walls. It's not that you don't love your kids, though. But we go to rehab, and you've worked there. All the moms want their kids back right away and everything. And it was funny, but even when I left this time, I was a little bit wiser in the sense that I was like, I'm not going to get them back right away. I'm going to go to React first on my own, which is what I did. And then I'm going to get Grayson, which one was first? One of them was first, Grayson, and then London after. Like, I actually chilled out and didn't rush it. And anyways, so when I got them back, I felt like I faced everything. I felt like I realized I had no idea how to parent, how I wanted to parent. I could treat it as a job. I did with my daughter, Cyan. I parented her. I wasn't using when I was in Germany, I wasn't an addict. It wasn't anything like that, but it was a job. That's not how you're supposed to parent. And I had come to the realization that that's how I had treated parenting. Not because I didn't care, but because you're trying to control everything and fix everything and power through everything. And I got these kids back, and I was like, you know what? I actually wanted to go to work because I wanted to maybe, make more money and get out of housing and do better things, right? This is, it's my flesh speaking. And I was like, thinking about doing all that. And the Lord told me that He told me not to go back to work. And He told me I was to stay home, and I was to build a foundation, and I was to work on my character and my integrity, first of all, because I wasn't ready for work because I didn't have the character or the integrity. Ouch, but it's okay. It's what the Lord does. And also that my family was priority. And so, I was like, okay. So I told the Lord, I submitted. And I decided to stay at home, and I decided when I was going to stay at home, that was going to be intentional. I was going to parent intentionally. We were going to do this, because I was like, we're going to end the cycles. And this is hard work. This is very difficult work. It's very messy. It's very painful, but, I submitted to it and entered into full-time parenthood at home. Also, I'd gotten pregnant during COVID with I'm married now to the father of my two youngest. So I was pregnant, so I actually ended up having another baby as well, right? And I was really sick at the time as well, actually. But anyways, long story short, so I entered into parenthood, and it's a cross. It's a cross. It was a cross. It's been a cross. But I feel like God puts you, if you submit to his will, God has the places you need to be in to truly find him. And parenthood, the reason it was such a cross too is because it's hit at every insecurity I have. I have never been more insecure in my life. I could have gone and done a job, but parenthood, I don't know what it is, Virginia. Being passionate about breaking the cycles, being passionate about installing the word into my kids, being passionate about doing things differently so that they don't have to carry what I carried. It's a cross. I am insecure. I need Jesus all the time. I don't know what I'm doing because I have screwed up so many times. And I'm going to just be open about some of the things that, I've struggled with as a parenting, because also I want to say that I have a blended family. This isn't, we've been married forever with kids from the same dads. I've got a blended family. I've got my 2 oldest from 2 different dads, and then my 2 youngest from the same dad that I'm married to right now. And I've also, and that even has things in itself because I was different by the time my 2 youngest came along. I've parented them a little differently than my 2 oldest. And my 2 oldest have trauma because they've been through apprehensions. My daughter didn't have me in her life because she was in the States with my ex-husband. Grayson I had a lot more visits with, but he has his trauma too and his emotional. It's messy. It can be very extremely messy. But I'm telling you, the thing is, and I used to kind of be like, well, because people would say, you don't need anything but the Bible to parent your kids. Like, he'll get you there. And I was like, well, what do they mean by that? Yeah, he does. You know what? You dive into God, you go into the secret place with God. He'll even give you insight to what's going on with your kids. He will, you know what? Like, there's so much he will do because I'd feel so pressured to also break these cycles that I was taking it on myself and doing it in my own strength. And what would happen is I would snap. Or, something would happen and I would yell at my kids. Or, my daughter spills all the time. And I'll never forget the day when I realized I was yelling at her for spilling. And it broke me. Because my kid doesn't deserve to be yelled at for spilling. But it wasn't about the spilling. These are things I've had to look at in myself. Words I've spoken that didn't need to be said. Certain, you got to watch word curses over your life. But when I became a parent, I'm just saying all of these things started really surfacing, really coming up. I started really seeing where I was struggling in my life, how guarded I was, how much of a control freak I was, how much I wanted to fix it all, how much I wanted to make it all better, how much I thought if I would just be a mom, I would be able to fix it all. You can't prevent your kids from going through pain. You just have to point them to the Lord so they can learn how to get through pain and be resilient, right? Because my kids have to face some stuff, So it's been really difficult, actually. It's been extremely hard because I've had to allow God into places in my heart so that I could heal, so that I'm parenting differently, so that I'm parenting with patience, so that, and when I do mess up, because I'm not going to get it perfect, I can humble myself. And I can go out and apologize to my kids. For an example, I'll share a story that happened with Grayson. So like I was sharing, he was giving me attitude, and this was also new in my relationship with the Lord. So I was very insecure too, and took it a little personally, even though I was trying to be patient, but you can also handle so much, right? So I had flipped out and yelled at him in the kitchen. And I can't even remember exactly what happened, but he had said something that had really hurt my feelings. And I went into the bedroom to pray because I saw that I was getting out of control. I saw that I was taking it personally and I was getting emotional and I was yelling at him. And I remember praying and God showed me because my son had went to his bedroom, I guess. And God, because I was like, how am I supposed to, this is me praying back then, okay? How am I supposed to do this? How am I supposed to parent? He doesn't even want to change. How am I going to do this? I can't fix everything. I've already messed, all this stuff. And he has too much attitude. I'm not going back out there. I'm sitting there. This is how I was. And God's like, well, you have to go back out there. And I'm like, I don't want to. And he's like, you need to humble yourself and apologize. And I'm telling you, I was angry. I was like, I really don't feel like it. And God was like, Lindsey, he's not disrespecting you. when you yelled at him, you hurt his feelings, and he erected a wall around his heart. And if you go in and you humble yourself and you apologize, you have a chance to tear that wall down before it becomes permanent. And I remember I was like, okay. And I went in and and this was also, I'm mentioning this story because it started changing some of my parenting too. I went in to my son's room and I sat there and I apologized. And in this moment, I had no answers. I had no solutions. I had no way to fix it. All I had was my apology, but I had the Lord, and I sat there, and instead of trying to fix everything, instead of trying to talk so much, instead of trying to control it, I just apologized and let my kid go through it. And he broke down and he started crying. And from then on, I've noticed something, that when you let your kids move to tears, they move past frustration and anger. And I think oftentimes we don't like to do that. And we want to jump in right when they're angry. We want to start controlling things, but they get stuck in their anger and their frustration. And all they really need is not necessarily the answers, but for someone to sit in the mess with them, the way Jesus put on flesh and entered our mess into our broken humanity. All the Lord wanted was for me to sit there with my child in his brokenness, in my brokenness, and just let him process. And I had no answers. And he broke and he cried. And I've noticed that ever since then, that if I just sit with him and he moves to tears, anger breaks, frustration breaks. And that's just sort of like an example of like God showing up in parenting. And how much God can give you and how much God can show you and how much God can like really seriously show you what to do. And it was the first time too where I didn't need the answers, where I didn't need to control and fix it, where I didn't feel like I had to, because I think part of the problem was with my past, with what I've done to my kids, is I've tried to make up for it. Because you guilt parents. And then you want to make up for all the things you did. And this was just a very pivotal moment of change for me, because I felt like I could trust God and realize that even if my kids had to go through this mess and this pain, that ultimately God has the victory, God has the redemption, God has our healing, he has our restoration. And sometimes you just got to go through it, and it takes time. And it was just that was just an example. I have so many, but that's one, yeah.
That's a very powerful example. And I often think to myself when I see like the work that you do with your crafting and your art, and I remember one particular set of paintings that you posted, and you put them up there and you said, well, this was me, but I was just experiencing or experimenting, and there was just feelings and emotions all over this. And the colors were, some of them were dark, some of them were like vibrant, some of them were, but I seen from the darkness to the light, right?
Yeah.
And so it's very similar with us when we're processing. It's as if God's given you this channel to help your children walk through this.
Yeah.
And then he's also given you this ability to create and walk through this yourself, right? And to express and to bring it out, because there's just him to talk to, but he's got you in this creative process. And so this creation, it takes me back to where he said to you, Lindsey, you're pregnant.
Yeah.
So not only did he bring it to the point where you birthed out these 4 beautiful children, but now you're birthing out wisdom, you're birthing out creation, you're birthing out pictures, you're birthing out art, you're writing stories, you're bringing out all these things that were, you went through over here.
Yeah.
This little girl is processing all these years later, all this stuff along with her children. So he has given you back your childhood, right? He's giving you back a place to play and to learn and to discover and, to protect against those bullies, to redo this area of your life. Like, I just find your story fascinating.
Thanks. I was just going to say quickly, parenting has been amazing though, because I've had a very hard time parenting because I couldn't even be in the moment or enjoy it. And now I'm like, how did I get here? Because there's so much to learn from them. They're amazing. But I had such an inability to be in the moment because I was always so trying to fix it all and prove it all and be on top of everything, right? Instead of letting the Lord lead and being okay with what comes our way too, right? It was funny when you mentioned the art. I'll say quickly, I'm going to confess here. One of the reasons I had to take a break from art, besides the fact that our place is too small right now, is I was getting too perfectionist again. And I decided that I was going to take a break and just work on that. So when I came back to it, it was coming from a different place. Yeah, that's why.
That is beautiful. I'm excited to see what you create. I'm excited to see what you write.
Thank you.
And I'm so grateful that you came out today and shared your story and your heart with us. And I just have one final thought. You know, when we allow God to become our father, become our husband, become that creator in our life, when we take on his name and we claim him as, you know, come into my life, Jesus, we take on a new identity.
Yes.
And as that new identity forms,
Yeah.
and we become a child of God, like
Yeah.
you said in the beginning, you said, I'm a child of the King, right?
Yeah.
As we become that child of God, it's exciting. It's an
is.
exciting process to see what he's going to do at the end of the day.
It
So
is.
I'm excited to watch your process, and thank you so much for sharing your life with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.